Today we're going to make a modern tiki drink, the Ancient Mariner. For this drink, you're going to need a tiki mug, or a double old-fashioned glass, a jigger, a measuring spoon, a fancy straw, a cocktail shaker, citrus juicers, a fine mesh strainer, a cutting board and a small knife, a Lewis bag and an ice mallet, and optionally a citrus zester or a swizzle stick. This drink uses Jamaican rum, Demerara Rum, or in this case a Navy strength blend of both, pimento dram, simple syrup, freshly squeezed grapefruit juice, freshly squeezed lime juice, and optionally a lime wedge and a mint sprig for garnish. This drink was created in 1994 by Beachbum Berry, a tiki historian and the proprietor of the tiki bar Latitude 29 in New Orleans. Originally, Berry didn't set out to create a new drink, but rather to recreate Trader Vic's Navy Grog. Berry, being a tiki archaeologist, basically a drunken Indiana Jones, was searching for the recipe to Trader Vic's version of the Navy Grog. Unfortunately, the only thing he could find listed the ingredients as Trader Vic's Navy Grog rum and Trader Vic's Navy Grog mix. So he broke the drink down and recreated it by taste. This wasn't an easy task for him, and it required a lot of trial and error. The main difference between the original Don the Beachcomber Navy Grog and the Trader Vic's remix was the sweetener. For the sweetener, Don used honey syrup. Vic replaced that with a combination of simple syrup and pimento dram. Pimento dram is a rum-based allspice liqueur, so it's basically pumpkin spice with booze. However, even in a quarter ounce, which is what the recipe calls for, it's a little too much for me. It really overpowers the other flavors in the drink. Think of it like absinthe, a little goes a long way. So in this case, I'm only using a teaspoon of it. But if you'd like to go full bore on the pimento dram, don't let me stop you. This is just how I prefer it. Berry got pretty close to Vic's recipe for the Navy Grog with this drink, or at least the interpretation of it that Martin and Rebecca Kate present in their book Smuggler's Cove. But the big difference between Berry's Ancient Mariner and Vic's Navy Grog, besides a couple measurement tweaks, was Berry's exclusion of light rum, and his insistence that it be made with white grapefruit. White grapefruit was a Don favorite. It's a little more mild than pink or red grapefruit, and Berry specifically called for it in this drink. In terms of the rums, this drink uses equal parts Dark Jamaican Rum and Demerara Rum. Feel free to use your favorite Jamaican and Demerara rums, or a Navy strength combination of the two, which is how I like it. The drink was originally served in a double old-fashioned glass with a scored lime and a mint sprig for garnish, and in this case a Beachbum Berry cocktail pick for good measure. The name of this drink is not actually an allusion to the epic poem Rime the Ancient Mariner, but rather a commentary on how long it took Berry to come up with this drink, because by the time he got it right, he felt ancient. Now, I interpreted the name a little differently. My interpretation was inspired by the H.P. Lovecraft story The Call of Cthulhu. In this version, the mariner is sailing perilously close to the Ancient One, much like in the third act of the story. The Cthulhu mythos has a lot of unintentional connections to the tiki world. Cthulhu's resting place is an unmapped island in the South Pacific, halfway between New Zealand and Chile. And a lot of his earthly cult followers work in secret among the swamps and streets of New Orleans, the childhood home of the founder of tiki, Don Beach. Not to mention that those same followers carry and worship a stone carving of the Ancient One. In other words, a tiki. This tiki mug is made by Shima Ceramics, a ceramicist and bartender who makes collectible, usually non-traditional tiki mugs and bowls. The metal swizzle stick, called the Voyager, comes from VanTiki, another tiki ceramicist who not only makes limited collectible tiki mugs, but also makes a habit of smashing the molds like a rock star. Together, the Cthulhu Tiki mug and the Voyager Van Swizzle create a darker interpretation of the otherwise innocent-sounding tiki drink. Before I get started, I like to cut, squeeze, strain, and bottle my citrus juices. That way it's easier to pour when it comes time to measure. Next, beat up some ice. Add the ice cubes to a Lewis bag and roll it up. If you don't have a Lewis bag, you can use a bar towel. Just fold it up so the ice can't escape. With the Lewis bag rolled, break it up like Yoko meeting the Beatles. Then measure out 12 ounces of crushed ice and set it aside. Next, measure 2 ounces of Navy rum, add that to the shaker. With this shaker, that's 2 pours. Alternatively, you can measure out an ounce of Jamaican rum and an ounce of Demerara rum and add those to the shaker. Then measure out half an ounce of simple syrup, add that to the shaker. Measure out half an ounce of grapefruit juice, add that to the shaker. Measure 3/4 ounce of lime juice, add that to the shaker. Measure a teaspoon of pimento dram, or alternately you can do 1/4 ounce of pimento dram, add that to the shaker. Add 12 ounces of crushed ice, and 3 or 4 ice cubes to help stir the pot. Give everything a good shake to chill it down and give it some dilution. If you're doing a double old-fashioned glass, whack the rim of your glass with a mint sprig to release some oils and give it that great aroma. Pour the contents of your shaker unstrained into your glass, and prep your lime. Do this by scoring the end of it in a T. Then cut it into a wedge. That way you can garnish your drink with the mint and a scored lime wedge. If you're doing the Lovecraftian version, pour the contents of your shaker unstrained into your Cthulhu mug, and try to get less of it on your bar than I did. Then drop in your swizzle stick and fancy straw. And there it is, the great old one, the ancient mariner, Akole Moluna. Click here for more videos. Be sure to subscribe and check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For links, more info, and the printed recipe, check out the description below.